Oh, hello everyone. This is Data Driven Formula One with Patrick, Henz, and Ganna Pogrebna. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Ganna. Hello, all. And we are back with Nelson Piquet this time. Looking forward to this episode.
That's right. So, yeah, that's probably the most kind of controversial figure that we have spoke about to date, especially in the light of his latest racist remarks that he made against Lewis Hamilton. But we're here we're gonna come with maybe objective lens first and look at his career, and then maybe get to the to the fighting and to the all the comments that he made in the public domain about other drivers. And let's maybe start with we'll start with his early life.
Yeah. Right. So his complete name is Nelson Fredo Piquet Sotomayor, also known as Nelson Piquet. As you may know, most Brazilians have very long names, which including one or two first names, and then at least two family names. First name of the father, second is name of the mother. And as this is quite difficult to remember, mostly you shorten it then to the first name and then the family name from the father side.
Yeah, that's right. And we will talk about this. I mean, so he was from quite a kind of well-to-do family, but he didn't get support of his family when he was pursuing his career. And he's also known as a quote-unquote happy gypsy driver. I mean, no offense to gypsies, but what the word gypsy means in this case is that he for many years lived on a boat and basically didn't have an apartment or like, I don't know, house. And that boat was kind of taking him around the locations where you're supposed to race. And so yeah, I mean, you would probably find a lot of references to him as a happy gypsy driver, and you wouldn't know what that means, but that's basically where it's coming from. And again, I just want to remind our audience that this is meant to be a form of podcast, but because we are on YouTube and Spotify, and YouTube is our main platform, we are also showing you some slides and some videos, so that just something to accompany the voice. And we are using only responsible sharing of materials. So we're only showing you pictures where we have the rights, or the pictures have been in the public domain with the licenses that we could use.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I forgot to say that we appreciate subscriptions, shares, and comments. That motivates us to do more episodes. So please do that if you can.
Yes, please. Before we discuss him, just the basic facts. Born 1952 in August 17 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He participated at Ensign, McLaren, Brabham, Williams, Lotus, and Benetton. A lot of teams, accumulating 207 entries, 22 victories, and 3 championships. Early life, even though he was born in Rio de Janeiro, he was a son of a physician who had been moved for work to Brasilia. Brasilia is in the middle of Brazil. It was the country's third capital, its actual capital. You see here in the photo, which I had the pleasure to take as I visited. So he
Oh, wow.
born in a very small city, completely different to the cliche which you have from the country.
Yeah, that's right. So that's very familiar to me. In Australia, obviously, it's
Yeah,
similar
right.
because there is Sydney and there's all these large cities, and then there is Canberra that is very rural, very small, but nevertheless very cute as well. Yeah. And yeah,
Exactly.
so as Patrick said, the reason why they moved is because his dad became the Minister of Health, so he was quite a big deal in Brazil. So it wasn't like a poor family, but he didn't support this. Sort of the hobby of the karting hobby that Nelson Piquet had. And this is why, if you're wondering why he's not called Sotomayor, Goncalves Sotomayor, because he used his mother's last name, maiden name as his racing name. Yeah.
Exactly. So his father disapproved motorsports, I assume for the various reasons,
But that's
including. Yeah.
very interesting, right, Patrick? Like when we discussed other drivers, we were saying normally they would do something related to racing, like they would do motorcycle racing, or they would do
Yeah.
bicycles, or they would do speedboating. But with Nelson Piquet, it's actually very interesting because he was really good at tennis when he was younger, and he actually was competing and winning some junior championships. So we could have lost a great tennis player as well here.
Yeah. In fact, so tennis, I assume a sport which was more adequate for this level of families when you are in high level politics. Of course, also much less dangerous than motorsports. So this is what his father wanted him to become. Also, he got a scholarship at a college here in Atlanta. I tried to find out which, because I'm here in the Atlanta area, I could not see at which college he had been in Atlanta. But I know that still today you can get scholarships at colleges here in Atlanta if you're very good in tennis. So we have this tennis scholarships for tennis still today here, at least in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, and this is how he also learned English. For better or worse, as we will see later. And to hear, yeah, so that kind of also allowed him to do some kind of his own negotiating for teams and confidence in his negotiating skills. But yeah, he didn't have any interest in tennis, so he did it because it's it was a good it was something that he just did since he was a kid. But yeah, his heart was in racing.
Yeah, indeed. So also he dropped out from university. Originally he started engineering, something which I am sure helped him for motorsports, but also for his time after active motorsports, and we will come to this later.
Yeah, so he's this typical bad boy, like from a rich family, completely disobedient, doing whatever he wants, like all this kind of stuff. So it's a little bit like textbook, bad boy sort of start. But then, yeah, like Patrick said, that's exactly correct. He completely lost all the support, and he had to do it kind of himself in racing. So he had to prove himself. And for that reason, like I said, he didn't have a place to stay, so he was living on a boat and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So effectively, yeah, his start in Formula One was not on off the support of his rather well-to-do family from Brazil.
Yeah, but besides all of this, his first steps had been quite classical into motorsports. First go-karting, and then advised by Emerson Fittipaldi, he continued with Formula Super Free, which was quite popular in Brazil. So Formula cars with Volkswagen engines, quite well, not quite cheap, but affordable, and that's why quite popular in Brazil at that time. Later, 1978, he had been in British Formula 3, where he broke the record by Jackie Stewart, related most wins in one season.
Yeah, and then he made it into an ensign, right? So yeah. So yeah, that was his first team, and yeah, he wasn't unfortunately very successful simply because the car wasn't great. Yeah.
Right, but at least he impressed in the short time he was driving before retiring. So we discussed it, or many times we had in the 70s, 80s, up to 90s, these small teams quite at the back of the pack, but important way for the youngsters to get a first step into Formula One and present themselves, so that next year they could be inside one of the more medium teams.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, and eventually he got the gig in McLaren, and that allowed him to do to actually be competitive. Yeah.
Yep. Then 1982, so he won only one race, but BMW's first victory in Formula One with the Pogrebna BMW Turbo. As you mentioned, often now seen as maybe the bad guy, but also, of course, he had very many positive sides. So he was the one who first assisted Didier Pironi after his career-ending crash at the practice of the German Grand Prix. And then he had the unfamous collision with the Chilean ATS driver, or RTS driver, as it's a German team, Elise Salazar. There we have also many photos, as it was live broadcasters on TV.
Yeah, we will come back to that. Maybe we'll do the 1985. So yeah, first, but yeah, I just want to say to what Patrick just said about Nelson Piquet. Yes, indeed, he's very kind of this passionate, intuitive driver, and for that reason, he just sometimes cannot keep his mouth shut and cannot like keep himself to himself. So he's sort of one of those people who really expresses the passion and kind of lives in the moment and is very instinctive, intuitive driver. It's really cool to see those drivers in the sport, because we like normally are in the realm of this very weighted, very professional people. So it's really cool to see like real human emotion there. And we'll come back to the episode with Eliseo Salazar shortly, because this was really something that is still stuck in the mind of many people. But just to say, one thing is that not only he was helping other drivers, he also was mentoring them. And Eliseo Salazar actually was his protege. So he actually supported him to get into Formula One. So he really encouraged him. And he made a mark on, made his mark in the sport for supporting many people. He indeed was this really sort of, very engaged, very supportive person. But at the same time, like these outbursts of emotions, sometimes in the wrong places, really play like bad jokes with him, I think, throughout his career. And we will see that later as well.
Exactly. So,
but let's maybe talk first about 1985, and then we'll come back to the episode with Eliseo Salazar. Yeah.
exactly as you mentioned, 85, Brabham, unfortunately, struggling financially. Piquet had various options. First, he had been in discussion with one Dennis, but they're not agreed on conditions. So he took the other parallel option and went to Williams, not only from financial points, but also Williams had the joker with the Honda engines.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, we also need to say that Brabham was his most successful run because he spent over 7 years in Brabham, and he also won 2 world championships with this team. So, but
Correct.
again, like you see, this is kind of the type of impatience, right? So, like it's not like the we always say with Patrick, this is a very unpredictable sport. One year you're doing well, another year you're not doing well, and you need to have the patience, right, and the luck, obviously, to kind of to be the champion, because you need to wait for the car to be there for you. You need kind of wait for all stars to align. And sometimes, when you have that amount of emotion and that amount of passion, you are not very patient to wait until the car is there. And that was exactly the problem in 1985 for Nelson Piquet.
And I completely agree with you. And also for me, Piquet, the team I mostly relate him to is the iconic Brabham in white blue with the Parmalat and the turbo engine. Well, I remember quite a show these cars. If they had been running very fast, but also many times they had to stop due to technical problems with the turbo engine, with a lot of fire, was always quite spectacular to see. Also, we have to say
we've talked. This is what I'm just saying. This is what we've talked about. That the run in Brabham was very, very successful.
Exactly, and also to point out, he was driving against Niki Lauda, and who was the fastest, the champion coming from Ferrari. So he, even as the rookie in the team, he did quite impressive results, including compared to drivers like Niki Lauda.
Yeah, and this is this infamous episode with Eliseo Salazar, kind of very. So yeah, basically it was again everything cool happens at the German Grand Prix. This one was in Hockenheim, and basically Eliseo Salazar just made a mistake and caused the crash. And before the crash, Nelson Piquet was leading in his Brabham, so he was kind of had pretty good chance of winning that race. But as a result of this crash, he came out and he literally kicked Eliseo Salazar's ass, like you can say it that way. He basically fought with him on live TV. So it's not a very sporty behavior, and probably I think thinking now, you probably would get disqualified, probably would be banned from participating forever. But back in the day,
Most probably.
yeah, but back in the day, in 1982, the sort of the views of FIA were pretty vegetarian, and sort of they didn't execute him for this as a driver, so he basically continued to race. But yeah, I just want to say that this is it's not that he had basically he hated Eliseo Salazar or something like that. So Eliseo Salazar was his friend, okay? This is a friend whom he supported to kind of go into Formula One. And yeah, so this was also the... I'm also wondering that if it were someone he didn't know very well, maybe he wouldn't have reacted this way. But you also can see the kind of the instinctivity and all this kind of emotional drive that can lead him sometimes into these really crazy situations. And we'll talk about other situations later. But in this case, it was a physical, physical fight. Normally, he would also have a lot of verbal fights. He would make really, inappropriate comments about his teammates, inappropriate comments about the members of the family of the teammates, and so on, other drivers, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's quite kind of part of who Nelson Piquet is.
Yeah. So the accident with a lapped car may remind us to something later, decades later, the accident between Coulthard and Schumacher, where Michael was also storming after the race into the McLaren Mercedes box, where you may have the impression that he also wanted to start a fight, which wouldn't have been a good idea because Coulthard was much bigger than Schumacher. But what I've heard then, even if he was very angry storming towards Coulthard, they talked about it and had been fine after what have been explained by Norbert Haugdim, the team manager at that time. Also, it reminds me to another accident with another Brazilian, Ayrton Senna, who had been kicked out of the race by the John Louis Schlesser in the left, I don't know which team he was driving for, which was the only race of the whole year where there had been no McLaren victory.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no fighting scene after, if I remember it correctly.
Yes, so that's right. Well, Ayrton Senna was not known for fighting, but Nelson Piquet was, as you can see. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see some photos of the incident, and yeah. But I encourage you to actually watch the race. It's a lot more entertaining if you watch it live, and you can understand the passion. So he was actually, noticeably angry about it.
Indeed.
And yeah, like the reason if you watch us on YouTube, you can see Mansell together with Nelson Piquet now on your screens, and this is because Mansell, I think, is the person who suffered most from very rude comments from his teammate Nelson Piquet, and we'll come back to this very shortly because it's there were some really inappropriate comments going his way.
Yeah. But let's go back a little bit to the numbers. As mentioned, Piquet moved to Williams, where he have been joined with Nigel Mansell. Honda was rapidly paying most part of his 3.3 million salary, quite high in the beginning of the 80s, even if now it would be a quite cheap contract. At that time, Menzel was not the well-known driver as he became afterwards. So he just thought this would be another paid driver or another teammate, as he was known from Brabham in the last years, which he really didn't have to care about. And with this, he completely underestimated Menzel, who reached to win two of the next three races in 90 in the year.
Yeah, I think that's because again Nelson Piquet thought that he would come to Williams and will be this big star, so because he wanted to be the first driver. But
Yeah.
then Nigel Mansell is completely different personality. So like we discussed with Patrick previously in previous episodes, he's this very methodical, very calm, very professional driver. So it's completely different style. And because of that, he has consistency. And because of that consistency, he was able to get, several wins. And so now we were in this situation in Williams where the position of the top driver was basically undecided. It's very rare when we have these situations, but in 1986, that was effectively the situation in Williams, where there were two very strong drivers, but it was very difficult to say who is the top driver, the first driver.
Exactly. So, as you said, Piquet not only expected being the number one driver, but also, I mean, he came from a situation where he was used to that he was the number one driver, meaning he got preferred treatment. He was the first to get updates. So he really had to switch his mind again. That's back to competition inside the whole team. So he really a relevant change if you switch one job where you have all this unique support to another job where you had to fight again. Then we come to 88, 89, his Lotus time. Nelson Piquet took the decision to switch to Lotus, who have been stagnating on the one side. On the other side here, he had been the clear number one, and also he had the Honda engine anymore. Maybe nevertheless, I think this switch wasn't the best decision, as Lotus was not where the team had been in the 1970s. So even though they had Honda engines, there had been no way competitive against the McLarens.
Yeah, and when we discussed, we have a separate episode when we discussed Chapman's career and Lotus. So 1988 was also financially very difficult for Lotus. So yeah, that was... and I can imagine that Nelson Piquet was not a cheap pick. So like, yeah, that probably also contributed to the fact that they didn't have enough cash to kind of sustain.
Yeah. And another important point, if aligned with his character, it wasn't easy for him maybe to accept that Brazilians' focus shifted from him to the new local hero, Ayrton Senna.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, we will discuss this later. He was interviewed at one point about whether, they asked him, who is the better driver, you or Senna? And it was very recent interview, and he said, "Well, I'm still alive." So, and the meaning that he was basically implying that he was a better driver. So, that's also kind of tells you that he does take it very emotionally.
Yeah, and on the other hand, the reactions, especially in Brazil, hadn't been that much in favor because, to be honest, I mean, on the one hand, I guess most of the people think that Senna was the better driver. But secondly, the Brazilian heart is with Senna, and it's not with Piquet. At least for speaking about the most of the people.
Yes, that's right. And well, like I said before, obviously Nigel Mansell was getting a lot of grief because, yeah, like he was constantly insulted in public by Nelson Piquet, and yeah, so he also called Nelson Piquet also called Nigel Mansell's wife ugly, and so there was very also public display. So yeah, it's just you know, he sometimes would say something that I think ultimately he would regret. But I think, you know, back in the day, it wasn't, a lot of it wasn't taken very seriously. I think if he were racing today and would make similar comments, he would have never survived more than one season, because it's really not appropriate. Yeah.
Especially with the next point where he compared Senna to a Sao Paulo taxi driver. Here you have to know that there's a big rivalry in Brazil, saying a little bit the cliche, people from Sao Paulo don't like the Cariocas, people from Rio, and people from Rio don't like Paulistas. So titling as somebody coming from Rio saying that you are like a Sao Paulo taxi driver, this is practically in two ways bad. And next one, he said, Senna implied that he didn't like women. Of course, Brazil as a Latin country, especially back in the 80s, was a very machist society.
Homophobic.
Homophobic in many parts, much more than today. So it was practically, you may say, it was not that critical a scene when you say something homophobic in general by big parts of society. So it was completely different than today.
Yeah, and completely unsubstantiated, considering how many affairs Senna had. I mean, we still haven't discussed him, but yeah, he was also a very popular guy. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it was also related that Senna was dating an ex-girlfriend of him. I think it was that way. I wanted to look it up, but I didn't find it. But somehow this is how I remember. And it was quite common in this time. If you want to see something bad about a man, you tell him that he's gay, practically saying you're not a real man, which was practically still accepted by society in Brazil, but also in big parts of the world back in the 80s. I think today with this comment, you would be disqualified for various races.
Well, yeah, I think you would be completely, you would not be able to, not only race, I think you would not be able to like live normally if you made that public public comment.
You would lose a lot of sponsors and
But it makes you wonder, because you know, he recently used N-word in describing Lewis Hamilton, and like practically nothing happened. Like you know, I'm surprised that there were some strong reactions, but the reaction wasn't strong enough. I think like he still kind of got away with it. But yeah, I just want to say that obviously in this podcast we are completely against any racist, homophobic remarks, and this is not okay. Even though this was back in the 80s, this is not okay.
And as he mentioned, I think the interviews had been, I don't know, had been in the Bolsonaro time where, I mean, same practically as most countries here in the Americas, from Brazil up to US, very much separated. You have all the discussions against wokeism, for accepting more openness, etc. And I mean, Piquet also, we mentioned at the beginning, comes from a political family. He was supporting Bolsonaro. He was once driving him in a parade, etc. So he is. You may say he was more with a tendency to the right wing or populism lately. I can, on the other hand, I can tell you, I participated at corporate diversity training. So clearly, all these points have been mentioned in today's diversity trainings. If you're working in Brazil and the whole workforce gets educated, like in all countries, what you can say and what not, how to behave to ensure diversity, because Brazil has the big opportunity being highly diverse, and luckily normally homophobic behavior in Brazilian companies, it's not such a big problem due to my personal experience working with Brazilian companies.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, but that's true. I mean, we have Carnival in Brazil, which is like, you know, gay community attends quite a lot. But so, and that's why I'm wondering, like, how did he get away with it for so long? Because he made most of these comments in Brazil, like to Brazilian journalists. So, like, yeah, it would be quite. I mean, if any one of you guys who are watching us today from Brazil can tell us what his reputation is in Brazil, because it's very interesting, especially if you know what his reputation was back in the day. Because yeah, to be honest, I'm amazed that he I just want to say that I completely acknowledge his talent as a driver and as a three-time world champion, but at the same time, these types of comments, I mean, we know that people have been cancelled right everywhere for a lot less than this, and I'm just wondering how, like, with what luck does he get away with all these types of comments?
Exactly. So somebody from Brazil likes the comments. My impression would be that since the beginning, he has been known as the loose cannon, taking a little bit the role of the bad guy, in opposite to Emerson Fittipaldi, and of course, in opposite to Ayrton Senna, who have been both highly beloved. I think he has more the role of the bad guy, and that's why maybe Brazilian, as people also in other places, expect bad behavior from him. That's why he maybe gets less cancelled because of this.
Maybe, but still, it doesn't excuse. Anyway.
No, it shouldn't be an excuse.
yeah. All right. Well, Benetton, yeah. Well, that's an interesting patch, right? Because this is where Michael Schumacher also comes into his career. Yeah, and like Patrick said at the beginning, also the phenomenon of Nelson Piquet is that he had a really long career in Formula One, long and successful career. So, you know, and definitely it was good to see when you look at the beginning of 1990s, Michael Schumacher and Nelson Piquet in the same team, because again, it's a very different type of drivers.
Yeah, and as I've mentioned, maybe from my point of view, the switch to Lotus was not the best decision. Switching to Benetton is including to accept a contract where you get paid directly by points was a very good decision. Maybe Flavio Briatore, manager of Benetton, underestimated the quality of the car and maybe also the quality of Piquet, because maybe as most thought, Piquet's he's a driver of the past. Yeah, he still has his talent, but he doesn't have the speed anymore and still wants to earn some money staying around, and that's why he joined Benetton. And here he surprised everybody, including he surprised Flavio Briatore. He had a very good 99 season, scored a lot of points, and had been a very expensive driver for Benetton. So again, this was a very good year for Nelson Piquet, even though he couldn't compete about becoming champion, but he did much better than everybody would have expected, everybody besides Nelson Piquet himself. Then, as you already mentioned, next year, 1991, Roberto Moreno had been second Brazilian inside the Benetton team, but had been replaced by Michael Schumacher. Michael Schumacher had this great impression in the Jordan, so Flavio Briatore knew that Schumacher couldn't stay at Jordan. He discussed this with Willy Weber, Schumacher's manager, and Roberto Moreno had to leave from one day to another to make space for Michael Schumacher, who became the new star in the Benetton team, showing also then Nelson Piquet that yes, in 91, maybe he hadn't had his original speed anymore. And so Piquet, who saw that he would or already became practically number 2 in the team, decided it's time to leave the sports after the 91 season. With this, let's have an overview about his long career, starting 78 with the Ensign, then his long successful Brabham years, 2 championships, 1981 and 1983, and then his switch to Williams, where he gained his 3rd championship in 1987. Nevertheless, the photo I've chosen here is the 87 Brabham. No, it's not the 87 Brabham, it must be the 83 Brabham, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But I said for me, Nelson Piquet, mostly I associate him with the white and blue Brabham in the famous turbo times.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Also here, team duels, the first one you have to beat is your teammate. And here, Nelson Piquet always had a quite good figure. But we have to admit that many times Brabham was practically a one-man team, having a second driver on a much lower level, and also they exchanged the second driver so that it was quite normally that you have more points than the other driver in the team. Nevertheless, he was very successful, only beaten in 1979 by Niki Lauda and later 86 by Nigel Mansell.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I guess whereas there was respect for Niki Lauda, not much respect came Nigel Mansell's way.
Right, and also 1990, we still will discuss it later in a different episode. Nannini, also very big talent, hope for an Italian champion, but he had his helicopter accident, so he only drove half of the 1990 season. With this, we come to his activities after motorsports. Mentioned in the beginning, he started with engineering at university. So no surprise that he started a company called Autotrack, a company in Brazil who is offering safety for your car, as there's a higher risk that it gets stolen. You get it's similar I forgot how the computer is called. So you can include a chip somewhere in the car, difficult to find for the thief, sorry. And with this, you can track your car and you can see where the thief is taking your car and hopefully get it back. So this is the company which he is the owner of AutoTrack. Unfortunately, they only have their page in Portuguese. Nevertheless, you can get here more information.
Yeah, and no, we forgot to say that when he dropped out of school, he actually was helping in the garage. So he was doing a lot of mechanical work. So he was, again, very knowledgeable about the car. And I think the fact that he was watching Niki Lauda, was also a part of that training. So eventually because obviously Niki Lauda is the driver that is very in sync with the car and understands the car very well. So I think he was able to learn a lot from him, and that helped in later life, obviously.
Yeah. Now we come to his quotes.
Yeah, are you sure you want to do this? I mean, this this is the first time I'm doubtful we should read the quotes, but let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's start on. In 2 years, I'll be making more than Michael Schumacher. Yeah.
And that's because you didn't want to retire and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was quite at the end when Michael Schumacher appeared in Formula One. I mean, most likely he didn't make more, but I mean, no problem. He earned enough money, so that's fine. The second one, through Formula One, I bought my own boat. I learned to fly my own plane and helicopter, and my job with my company is a reflection of everything motor racing taught me. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah, but I think, this also tells you that he's a bit of micromanager, because you need to delegate. And, if he is trying to be like everywhere, it's very difficult. Like as a manager, I can tell you that. So I'm an executive director of an institute. And if you don't delegate, if you don't trust people, then it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the personality, right? That's the personality that drives up.
Yeah. Next quote, driving in Monte Carlo is like riding bike in your house. I mean, I think several similar quotes we already have heard from various other drivers, as Monte Carlo is attractive, not because of the track, but by the surrounding, the atmosphere. It's practically normally not a place where you would naturally drive a Formula One car.
Yeah, that's right. It's quite small.
Yeah. And practically, you already mentioned the quotes before, so we can repeat it here, related to Lewis Hamilton. The little black guy must be at the time, and I leave out the slurs. He was pretty bad. This is, of course, the translation originally done in Portuguese. So I read also the original Portuguese. And I can confirm, as I said, I had the pleasure also to participate at Brazilian diversity inclusion training. This had been quotes which are not accepted in Brazilian society, not today, and for a long time it wouldn't have been accepted, including it wasn't acceptable in 2016. The next quote is practically the same, so I don't have to repeat it. Also, the next one you already mentioned. The answer to the question who was the best Brazilian driver was just "I am alive." Again, not received very positive feedback by Brazilian society to what how they interpreted this line.
Yeah, legacy. I mean, and we all know Nelson Piquet, and we already with Patrick discussed his run in the Formula One. But yeah, I just want to say that Nelson Piquet has 7 children. That's a lot of kids, and these are.
Yep.
If you're watching us on YouTube, you now can see all his kids. Geraldo and Pedro, and then Marco, Kelly, Laszlo, Nelson, Nelsina, and Julia. Obviously, Nelson Piquet is in the middle, and yeah, so that's kind of his family photo shoot.
Yeah, and by the way, Nelsinho Inho in Brazilian means small.
Small, yeah,
So,
Junior, Nelson Junior, right?
Nelson.
Senior.
Mm, no, yeah, similar to Julian. So I'm just thinking. I'm not completely sure if Nelsinho is the official name. I would assume it's more a nickname. I could imagine that he's more called Nelson Junior, but everybody calls him Nelsinho, means small Nelson.
Yeah. And yeah, so we all remember his performance, especially in the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix that Patrick and I discussed. But yeah, when we discussed the rivalry in different teams, so please have a look. But yeah, very sort of dishonorable end to the career that could have been actually very good, I think, if he played it straight, right? Because he is a very talented guy in driving.
He was talented, yes, but unfortunately, this was the end of his career, and we discussed it on detail in the episode about the Ferrari driver Massa.
Yeah.
And his claim that he should have been a champion, but due to this action, which have been ordered by Flavio Briatore, the same Briatore who was team manager as Nelson Piquet Senior was driving for Benetton.
Maybe you should explain what exactly happened, because some people might not know.
He asked. It was said and I think confirmed that Flavio Briatore, team manager now of the Renault team, gave the advice to Nelson Piquet to crash the car to get yellow time in the race. This to support that his teammate Fernando Alonso would win the race, which worked out. Alonso won the race. And due to this, this also triggered that the Ferrari team had to bring in Massa. That this pit stop didn't really work out, was a little bit chaotic. And due to all of this, at the end, Lewis Hamilton got more points than Massa and won the championship, which is the claim by Massa. And as we discussed, he had a valid point. This only later all this information came out. It had been investigated, and Nels and Flavio Briatore had been banned from Formula One, I think, for lifetime. Piquet lost his job. There had been ideas that he would join later a team together with somebody from the Fittipaldi family to have practically a Brazilian team again. But this didn't work out.
Yeah, that's right.
That was in a nutshell.
Yeah, but I was gonna say that probably to people who are younger, the Piquet is less known than Kelly, and that's the daughter of Nelson Piquet, and Kelly is a model, and she's dating Max Verstappen, so that's why you probably have seen her more than Senior, who was in Formula One quite a while ago. It's already, he was basically his last season was 2008. So yeah.
Right, and Kelly, she's born here in Germany. Sorry, not here, but as I'm German, I still think here. But anyway, she's the daughter of Nelson Piquet and Sylvia Tamsma. Sorry for the Dutch audience. for my spelling. A Dutch model. Also, she had been as a social media influencer responsible for Formula E media coverage. She had a quite strong relation to the Red Bull team, to say it that way, because first she had been driver Daniel Kiewat. She also had a daughter together with him with 2019, but then ended her relation with him and later became together with Max Verstappen.
Yeah, so she's dating Max Verstappen, and I think a lot of people saw quite a lot of photos.
I'm just thinking, and honestly, I don't remember. I know that Kiewat was sacked from the team, also based on various accidents. I don't know if he was directly replaced in the cockpit by Verstappen or if there was still somebody in between.
Well, Kvyat generally didn't do well. He was he is from a very rich Russian family. And generally Russia didn't do well in Formula One. They had Marussia team that completely tanked. And to be honest, any any Russian sort of connection to Formula One didn't work really well. Yeah.
I was just thinking who directly replaced Kiewat, if it was already Verstappen or if there was another driver.
Yeah, I don't
remember. It doesn't really matter.
I don't remember, but we'll get to it when we get to 2019. Exactly. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. So. All right. So with that, well, this was a very controversial figure, not sort of an easy to talk about figure, but we got through this, and thank you for sticking with us. And just to remind you that our video is available on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also available in voice format on a lot of different platforms, thanks to Patrick, who kind of puts things everywhere. And we hope that you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe and leave comments and tell us if we missed anything, because like I said, we never claim that we know everything. And if there is something that you want to share, or you notice anything that we should have talked about and missed or made some errors, do tell us, because obviously we want to improve. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you next time.